Good morning, everyone. Again, those of you who just joined us, we want to welcome everyone to our 2020 South Texas All-Staff Virtual Conference. My name is Valerie Burciaga, and I am the past president of the Rio Grande Valley chapter of the Professional Association. I am also the Nutrition Grant Manager for the Texas Alliance of Boys and Girls Clubs. We are so excited that you're able to join us today. Our TPA chapter is in its 12th year of hosting this annual conference. And even though we can't be physically together, it is our hope that this virtual conference will be a great learning opportunity, especially as many of us are preparing to safely reopen our doors for our kids, and to bring us as professionals in the movement closer than ever before. With this conference being virtual this year, we were able to expand our reach and are thrilled that so many of our fellow club professionals from all over this big state of Texas are able to join us today. Just a reminder of a few virtual housekeeping items. Please be sure that you are on mute throughout the presentations to avoid any background noise and distractions. If you are watching this conference as a group, hopefully practicing your social distancing, and if you have not already done so, please be sure to use the chat box to enter your club's name and the names of all the staff present so that everyone can receive proper credit and certificates after the training. Throughout the presentations, please feel free to use the questions and answer box or chat box if any questions arise. They will be monitored throughout the presentations by a conference committee member, and our presenters will have a chance to answer them accordingly. Throughout the conference, we will be taking breaks so that we can get up, walk around, get moving, so that we're not just sitting at computers all day long. During these breaks, we will also be featuring some Fun with Fitness videos that have been put together by some of our amazing South Texas staff. Also, when we typically host this conference in person, we host a social gathering to build camaraderie and networking opportunities. This year, due to social distancing, our luau will also be virtual and will be after today's sessions at 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. And it'll include music videos, fun games, and of course, prizes. So if you're able to join us and want a chance to win some awesome goodies, please consider participating in today's luau with some virtual challenges. And lastly, this is our first time hosting a virtual conference. So we ask that you bear with us if we have any hiccups along the way, and we appreciate everyone's patience. Now I'd like to introduce a fellow committee member, Rocio Puente Mata, to introduce our first presenters today.
Hi, good morning. Thank you all for joining us for the 12th Annual South Texas All-Staff Conference. This is our 12th South Texas All-Staff Conference, but our first virtual conference. I am the Director of Development for the Boys and Girls Club of FAR, but I am also the Second Vice President for your TPA-RGV chapter. So today I want to introduce you to your first presenter. Our first presenter is LaFonda Williams. LaFonda is Regional Director of Program Training and Consultation. LaFonda Williams joined Boys and Girls Clubs in 2001. Actually, Ms. LaFonda, that's when I started Boys and Girls Clubs. She started her journey at Boys and Girls Clubs of Metro Atlanta as the Director of College Bound, and after 11 successful years with Boys and Girls Club of Metro Atlanta, she moved on to join Boys and Girls Clubs of America as the Director of Academic Success. LaFonda currently resides in Atlanta, Georgia. However, she is a proud native of Kansas City, Missouri. Ms. LaFonda received her undergraduate degree from Avila College in Kansas City, Missouri, and holds a master's degree in human services. In addition, she has been a certified national trainer for Boys and Girls Clubs of America for more than 15 years. Thank you, Ms. LaFonda, for being here, and welcome to our South Texas All-Staff Conference.
Thank you very much. And I also have a co-lead with me. So we want to also introduce her, but I'm very happy to be here today.
Hi, everybody. My name is Clark Hill. I think I was a kind of a last minute addition, so I didn't get that beautiful introduction like LaFonda did, which I just learned so much about you, which is always so nice. But my name is Clark Hill. I'm a Director of Quality Improvement at Boys and Girls Clubs of America. I have been with the movement for about 2.5 years, but been in youth development for about 20. So if you're doing your math, that does mean I started working at 2. I have been working with program quality and in youth development all over the country. And I actually started my career in Texas, in Austin, at a nonprofit youth development organization called Extended Care for Kids. So Texas is super near and dear to my heart. And then also, there may be many of you on that I know, because I also had the pleasure of co-leading the Southwest Texas Quality Pilot with Elise Dixon that we did in 2018. So I had the pleasure of working with most of your organizations, McAllen, FAR, Harlingen, etc. So I'm super stoked to be back here with you all today.
And so with that being said, we will go ahead and kick it off. Like we said, we're both excited. We're going to have a lot of fun. If you have not done the virtual piece with training, I'm hoping that this will be an exciting experience, because I think with the pandemic, we're going to be living in this world for quite a while. So with that being said, I'm going to kick it to Clark to start us off.
Okay, great. Excuse me. So I am going to share my screen. So let me share this and then I'll say what I was going to say. Okay, so hopefully you can all see my large PowerPoint now. Yes.
Let us know in the chat room if you're able to see that. We want to make sure.
Yeah, and LaFonda, if you would navigate the chat while I am presenting, and I will do the same.
Thank you.
That would be great. Okay, so we are here today to talk about critical connections. This training is specifically about how do we engage team members in our clubs in an authentic way. So I am realizing a couple of things that I'm just going to be upfront about. Let me make sure I'm right. Okay, so I have put this training together with the use of breakout rooms. If you've been on Zoom before, you may know what those are. It doesn't look like they have been set up because I don't have control, even though I am now the host. So Valerie, it's not anything wrong with that. They are something you have to set up on the front end, so that may not have happened. So I say all of that to let you all know that I'm going to have to change some of this on the fly to be a little less interactive. So have some grace for me and LaFonda as we figure this out and we go through. It's still going to be very valuable, and we'll get some opportunities for interaction, but I just wanted to be upfront about that. So we are using Zoom. I do think that Valerie talked about some of the things. You are welcome to use the chat box if you have a question or a comment about something that you just want to share with the group. That's a great place to put it. There's also the Q&A option, so you can use that as well. And that should, for the most part, be the only functions we're using. Please do make sure that you have yourself muted unless we ask you to come off of mute and share with us. So our agenda today is we've just done some introductions, some welcome. We are going to continue that with a community builder. And then also we'll do an opening activity that really gets us in the space, thinking about critical connections with teams. We'll focus on some central ideas. We will try to practice with those. We'll do some implementation, and then as always, we will reflect and close out. So with that, I am the purpose of today's session is that you will become aware of strategies to implement teen engagement practices at your club or youth center. So that's the goal of what we're going to do. So as I mentioned, we're going to start off with a community builder. So this is one of those where I was thinking we would use breakout rooms and I could put you in smaller groups. But it does sound like some of you are watching this in groups as well, so you can kind of do this in your group. And then I would like some people to just come off of mute and share, and then everybody else just put into the chat box what your response is. So as a lot of you probably know, a community builder is an activity like an icebreaker or a team building exercise that really helps to build trust and supportive relationships among youth and staff through like fun and active engagement, right? Like it's not that typical, like I'm helping you with math or something like that. We're gonna play a game and we're gonna kind of be in the same space and have fun together. That is just one of the elements of a high quality session. So if you have taken elements of a high quality session or the building blocks of programming session, or have seen that information in Program Basics, you can get a lot more info about community builders there. So there are different types of community builders: name games, team builders, collaborations, etc. You want to use different community builders at different points with your group. When your group is just meeting, name games are more appropriate, kind of more easy, get to know you things. And then as your group gets to know each other and builds trust, then you can increase the challenge of those kind of community builders that you're doing. So we always want to start off with that. And this community builder I thought would be really good because, you know, we want to be thinking about teens because that's what we're here today, is to think about how do we fully get teen engagement in our club or youth center. So in order to kind of bring us back to what it was like to be a teenager, some of you still may be teenagers, so you may not have to go back very far. But we're going to start off with a community builder called Remember When. Remember When is just a game where you can give somebody a question to think back. So this one, I want to kind of get us in that frame of mind of when we were in high school, when we were teens. So I would really love everybody to share, what was your favorite song or album or musical artist when you were in high school? So I will model that. For me, it was, and this is going to date and place me, but it was the Outkast album, AC Aliens. So that was my like high school soundtrack for sure. And I grew up in Atlanta, Decatur, and actually they came to my high school to perform. So still very important to me. And when I hear an Outkast song off of that album, I'm immediately brought back to that 16-year-old Clark. LaFonda, would you share with us what your favorite album, musical artist, or song was?
Well, Clark, I really would have to date myself. But I would say that my favorite album would have been something by Earth, Wind, and Fire called That's the Way of the World.
Nice.
And I've really dated myself. But, you know, it was because my older siblings, you know, were listening to it. It wasn't really me.
No, it was not on the radio at the time. You were to it later. Yeah. Thank you, LaFonda. So again, because we don't have the breakout rooms, I just want people to enter into the chat box. What was your favorite album? Who was your favorite artist? So you can enter that into the chat box. And then I would also really love if a couple people came off of mute and told us what your album was and talked about it a little bit.
Well, I'll tell you, I've seen Michael Jackson several times. I see Backstreet Boys. I see TLC. Yeah. Oh, wow. Now, I'm dating myself, but I like that Destiny Child and Trey. Yeah. So, yeah, does anybody want to come off and tell us a little bit more about that?
I'll share mine. I grew up in 90s music, so I was like Spice Girls and NSYNC, and I even went to London for the Spice Girls reunion tour. So that's me 100%.
What Spice Girl is your favorite?
Sporty Spice.
Clearly.
Obviously.
Awesome, Valerie. Thank you so much. Anybody else want to share one more? Okay, we have raised hands. If you raised your hand, go ahead and just put yourself off of mute and let us know. I think That's how that works.
With the attendees, you have to give them permission to unmute.
Oh, okay. There we go. Then let me pull up that. I think.
Boy.
Okay, and I will find a hand. Okay, here we go. Tammy, I just allowed you to talk, and I am unmuting you, or you may have to unmute yourself. Oh, there we go. Tammy, are you there?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Did you want to share your favorite music from high school with us?
Oh, from high school, it used Michael Jackson.
Yes. Any particular Michael Jackson song that's your favorite?
Pretty Young Thing
Yes.
was my favorite. And Billie Jean. We used to go skating on those songs at the skating rink. We used to love those songs of the 80s.
Oh, I love that. I always wished I grew up in the time when roller skating was so cool and people did it so well. I can't roller skate.
I was pretty good.
Yes, we did.
And then it looks like Norma Linda has her hand up. So I'm going to allow you to talk, Norma Linda. And I believe you have to unmute yourself, but I have allowed you to talk at this point.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
I have the same story. That's so weird that she said Michael Jackson and she remembers skating, because that's exactly what happened to us. We would go to this certain bowling alley that had skating, roller skating, and Michael Jackson, Donny Osmond, all those oldies artists of the time. So yeah, Michael Jackson became my favorite because that's the music we would hear while we were roller skating.
Absolutely. Thank you all for sharing. And I love this activity because I think music is one of those things that all of us have some connection to some music. And when you hear a song, it takes you right back to that place. So I'm sure for Tammy and Norma Linda, when you hear Michael Jackson, you can see yourself in that roller skating rink, being young and carefree. So that's why I like to start off with this, because it really gets us in that space again of what was it like to be a teenager. Thank goodness I'm not one anymore, but it's good to remember. All right, so we're going to move forward. Oh, those are the instructions. So today's session, the things that we are going to accomplish are we're going to explore strategies to incorporate teens' passion and interest into our club or youth center programs. We'll actually get some practice using those strategies, and then we'll have some time to develop an action plan to take back to your club or youth center. So that's the goal. Hopefully we'll get through everything. As Valerie mentioned, we are all learning how to do this virtual thing. So have patience and grace with me and LaFonda as we move forward. It sounds like you guys have already been through a couple of virtual group agreements, but we always do group agreements virtual as well. The ones that we've kind of put together are check your tech. Just make sure that you know how to use everything. You're not unmuted, but I do see that this has the setting where you can't unmute yourself, so that makes it a little easier. Be kind online. That means, we're trying our best, and everybody on the call, we're all trying to figure out how to do this virtual thing. So just give us some grace, give us some patience with everyone who is on the line with us. Make sure you're listening actively, not just to me, but to, or LaFonda, but to the participants as well when they're sharing. Some of the best parts of these are always when we get people to share, because you guys have amazing experience and stories that equal the experience that I have to share as well. And that's the best part of all of this. All right, so we are going to move into an opening activity. LaFonda, it's pretty much the same, except we won't do the breakout rooms. So it'll just be like silence on the line. Did everybody get the participants guide beforehand? Also.
No, we're going to share the participant guides after the conference.
Okay. Okay, so what we would like you to do is just on a piece of paper, or if you're on your computer, or you don't even have to write it down. We're going to think about stories about teens that we've worked with. So I'm going to hand it over to LaFonda to provide us some context for that. And I will take over looking at the chat.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Clark. Like she said, this is very different for us and we prepared differently. So please be patient with us. But what I'd like for everybody to do is just kind of take a moment and think about something that you're passionate about and how that motivates you. For instance, something that I've always been passionate about is really, just preparing youth for higher education. That was something that I didn't get, just to be honest. I didn't have that guidance and direction. Not that the adults in my life weren't positive, they just didn't know how to do it. And so that was something that I was always very passionate about, which led me to Boys and Girls Clubs. So just take a few moments and maybe think about something in your life that you're passionate about and how that's motivated you. And if somebody would, maybe if you guys choose to share, we'd love to hear, maybe if you want to type in the chat box, some of your stories, some of the things that you're passionate about and how that's motivated you. And it took me a few moments to think about it, so I'm going to give you guys a few. And then I'm sure I'll start seeing some things in the chat box, because the one thing I know about people who work for Boys and Girls Club, we're very passionate people. And so I know we'll see some things in the chat box. And we don't want you to be shy today. We really need everybody to be active and engaged, because that's how you're going to get the most out of this experience. So Clark, are we seeing anything yet regarding individuals' passions?
Yep, here we go. So being able to help children that need it most, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm super passionate about high quality youth programs. When I got into youth development, and then I discovered the kind of quality, and that's really where I found my my greatness. I say we all have greatness in it. Passionate about my children. They motivate me for sure. Passionate about being a good parent, a good example to the children that I'm raising, as well as the children in my club. Passionate about families, especially youth. Putting a smile on a child's face and making them feel like they matter. Yes. Helping teens positively connect with peers. Oh, I love this. Norma Linda shared that her former teens 20 years ago loved doing community service. So every weekend they did something for others.
That's interesting, because that kind of leads into kind of what we're talking about, and that's teens' passions. So we're going the very right direction. I kind of want to share you, because now we're going to move to thinking about not ourselves, but the teens that we maybe have worked with over time. And so I'm going to share maybe one of my experiences, and then I want you guys to do the same. I'm thinking about a young person, a club in the Midwest, and this young person really, really enjoyed something called anime, okay? And basically anime is like a Chinese type of animation. If you are familiar with Attack on Titan or maybe Dragon Ball, you've seen that type of animation. But she was extremely passionate about it. And so she went to her team director and she asked her team director if she could start a small club within the club. And the team director said, go for it. And so she did. What they found was that there were definitely other young people who were interested. They began to attend, and then they began to invite their friends. And so, of course, this grew into a wonderful program, one of the most popular programs at the club. Now, I call these type of programs something like, I call them destination programs, okay? And what I mean by that, when I say destination programs, each one of you, though you may be in the same region, you still have a uniqueness about your community. And sometimes there's particular things in your community that young people may be interested in, but they're unable to find a place within the community to actually show that. And so if everybody can remember to mute their phones, mute your phone. I know it's hard. You guys are doing a great job. But as I said, I call it destination programs. So it's just those programs that are unique to your group of young people. And so that's a story that grew. I mean, this still is one of the most popular programs. And when you look at it, you have a situation where you've had a teen actually experience a high level of success, and the club positive outcomes. So if you guys can take a moment to maybe think of some stories of teens that maybe you've worked with and you've seen how their motivation has really turned into some positive outcomes for the club. So are we seeing anything in the chat box? And you know, to be honest, this would be a great time for a person to unmute themselves and just really kind of share, as I just did, somewhat of a story about a teen and their passions and how that led to a positive outcome for the club. Is there anybody that would like to share?
So while people think about that, I'm going to read a couple of things that came up in the chat. And we would really love for anybody to come off of mute. So get your bravery and your story together and raise your hand and we'll give you the opportunity. But Rick Venesia from Boys and Girls Clubs of Mission says that this is his second go around with the Boys and Girls Clubs. This is so true for so many of us. He started back in 1994, about 5 years left, went to a totally different thing, and then came back and realized how much of a difference you can make when teens that used to be club members are now parents and are ever so grateful to you and the staff that helped them when they were here. This is one of the things that the club has the ability to do that not many other youth spaces have the ability to. I worked somewhere in youth programs that I didn't get families over years, right? Like, that's so important. It's so special. We've also got Ciandria. Sorry if I did not say that right. She's talking about how passionate about giving them great memories and moments to look back on that make them happy and learning from life the best way possible, both from positive and negative situations. Absolutely. All about empowerment and bringing out the best in young people. I like to lead by example and give them hope. I want them to know God is for them and they're more powerful than they know.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely. Beautiful.
And so guys, like I said, believe me, I really had to get myself worked up today to get on this camera. So somebody, I know you guys have had some of the wonderful experiences that I have. It's so wonderful to see young people come back with their own families and their own children. I don't know if any of you all have experienced one of your kids bring their kid to the club. But I know, because I know we change lives every day, and I know that we work with very passionate young people, and I know their passions lead to wonderful outcomes. So if I could at least just get one person.
We have two folks who are...
Oh, that too.
Yeah, Norma, Linda, and Tammy, you guys are the best.
Yes.
Hi. On the 25th of this month, I will be celebrating 21 years here at the Boys and Girls Club. So my first teens are already parents, and they're bringing their kids to the club because they had a positive experience. They're either in our summer camp program or after school services, or even through our sports department. We're seeing their kids because they had such a positive experience here.
Yeah. Isn't that the best compliment we could receive?
Yes. The other one is I work with the Youth of the Year kids, And I love it when they can talk about a staff member that helped them. And the staff member doesn't even realize what an impact they made in this child's life. But they're so eager to talk about it when they go in front of the judges.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Norma Linda.
Yes,
You're
thank
welcome.
you.
Tammy, did you want to share as well? And then I've got something in the chat box I was going to share.
Okay.
Tammy, if you want to share, you are muted, but you should be able to unmute yourself. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead. Oh, I'm going to go ahead, and there's a couple of things in the chat. So Tammy, if you want to, whenever you get the mic working, just let us know. So Washonda De La Cruz talked about they had a teen at the club tell them that she was always told by her family members that she would never amount to anything. So there was no point in trying hard. The expectations we set for kids, they will live up to, positive or negative. She said that the staff members at the club were the only people she had in her life that encouraged her to do her schoolwork and to try her best at everything she did. We were her safe place. She said that she was happiest when she was with us at the club. And I mentioned this a little bit ago, but in NYOI, overwhelmingly, the #1 reason kids come to the club is staff, by far. So exactly these experiences that you're talking about. We also have Tamara. And again, if I say anybody's name wrong, I am so sorry. I am trying. She said, I have never really worked with teens, but I've been working for the club for 13 years. I have been around all ages, but I chaperoned the college trip once, and just being able to share with them in college and being first-generation college students, I was able to share with them that I have 2 degrees, but I feel sharing with them my experiences. A lot of them have gone to college or are about to, and that is a blessing. Oh, good. And I said his name correctly. Yeah, absolutely. There was another comment, I can't remember who it was, but in the chat a minute ago that talked about they live in a college town 10 minutes from campus, and a bunch of their kids have never been on to the campus, right? Wow. We know that college doesn't become an interest until it's a possibility. And for a lot of our kids, they don't even think it's a possibility. So it can't be an interest if you don't think it's possible. So exposing kids to things like college and to new experiences, especially teens, they're learning so much in that period. That's how we make sure that we're responsive to their needs and desires and interests.
And those experiences are what lead to passions. You know, if you don't have an experience, then you don't develop the passion for it. So again, going back to my experience, I had the experience of maybe not having the support that maybe I would have desired, and I saw how that affected me. I didn't want that to happen to another young person. And so you have to remember that no matter how big or how small these experiences are, or these opportunities, every young person in the club should have the opportunity to feel a connection to their interest and to their passions. It's our job to survey, do focus groups, whatever it takes for us to be able to identify and understand what our young people's passions are. And when an adult connects with a young person's passions, that sort of gives them, it kind of says, oh, you know, this is a good thing. This is permission, you know, for me to take this and grow it. So that's a large part of our jobs. And that's why we wanted to do this exercise. It's just to kind of take you guys there.
And we have a comment from Paige that it's almost like Paige knew what we were going to do next. Paige, as teens setting up a program, my son is a junior staff and likes to play video games, and he set up a tournament for the 3 age groups. Yes, like that is exactly it. So many adults look at kids playing video games and they're like, what are you doing? Go do schoolwork, go do something more productive. Instead, you took his interest and we were like, how can we turn this into a leadership role, right? That kid developed, I don't even know if I could develop a video game. Well, one, I don't know anything about video games. power of saying to a kid, okay, let's take your interest and do something with it, right?
Yes.
So that's what we're here to talk about. So that was perfect, Paige. Thank you. All right. So with that, we're going to move into some central ideas. So kind of, we know that what we're here for is to think through how do we engage young people. We just talked about some of our own interests and passions and how that keeps us authentically engaged in life in general. And it's the same for teens. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is adolescence. Adolescence is generally considered to be the period between the beginning of puberty and full adulthood. So that's obviously the teen years right in there. Mostly you're a teen during that time. It's a time of incredible growth and change. I mean, I'm sure you all know, watching teens, man, like when a kid hits like 12, that 5 years between 12 and 17 is wild. So there's so much happening. They are evolving relationships with the people around them, with their peers, with adults, etc. They're building a new sense of self. Like when I was young, my sense of self, or younger than teen, my sense of self was wrapped up in my family and my school and all of these things. And as you get older, you start to develop your own sense of self kind of separate from all of those things. And that's what teens are doing. During this time, the big skills that teens are working on, and this isn't even necessarily like intentional. It's not like we've got 15-year-olds out here like, I am working on my critical thinking skills today. This is happening by default throughout their lives, throughout the day as teenagers. They are exploring critical thinking skills, right? Like they are having to make decisions for the first time, like real decisions. And they get to for the first time as well. They're also going to build up leadership skills. So leadership looks entirely different for every person. My leadership style is totally different than other people that I know, and neither is wrong, but we all have to learn what our leadership style is, because that's what makes our leadership authentic, is we are not trying to be somebody else in our leadership. So teens are learning, what does their leadership style look like? And they're learning those skills. So to the point that Paige made about her son is a junior staff and set up a tournament, he developed so many leadership skills while he was doing that are going to transfer into the rest of the areas of his life and continue to have an impact. Teens are also navigating how to effectively communicate, right? Like I remember being a teen and just feeling like nobody understood what I was talking about. And excuse me, one second. I don't have COVID, I just talk a lot, and I'm losing my voice. So, like I was saying, I can remember being a teen and feeling like, I'm trying to communicate something and that the people around me are not understanding what I'm trying to communicate. So teens are learning how to effectively convey their point of view. How do they get across and make people listen to them? That's particularly hard when you're a teenager, because adults generally don't listen to teenagers. It's not something that we think that we're supposed to do. We know differently because we're in youth development, but in the rest of their lives, they're constantly navigating, trying to communicate with people who don't really care what they have to say. So that's a lot of learning that happens during that time with that. We're also working on problem solving skills. This is as simple as I was in a group project and somebody didn't do the stuff that they were supposed to do. How do I respond to that? These are the first times that teens are experiencing real problems that they're going to have to figure out on their own. When we're young, we've got staff, teachers, and parents who help us problem solve, right? Eventually, we have to do it by ourselves. The teen years are those years where we can provide guardrails so that they are making decisions safely and choices safely, but we really allow them the autonomy to do that with the safety of just our guardrail. they're also working on independent living skills. There is so much in that. I think about all the time how I wish that I had had a class on, like paying my bills. I remember my parents would sit and they would be like, we're doing the bills. And I was like, what does it mean to do the bills, right? Like there are, and then I had to figure it out because I had to do the bills. But if somebody had actually taught me that, that would have been cool. So those independent living skills are huge because, again, we're about to make them live independently for the first time. So we want to make sure that we've built up the skills so that they can live independently. And then, of course, it is also a huge time for working on those 21st century work skills, right? Like teens are discovering what they are good at and what value they may bring. And they are going to start translating that into what work they're going to do potentially later on, right? Like they're figuring out, they're going from being 10 and being like, I'm going to be a ballerina when I grow up, to actually thinking, okay, I do like music and dance, but I'm not such a good dancer. How can I take that interest and still turn it into something that I can do for a career? All that's happening for young people between the ages of 12 and 18, and really more than that. The brain does not fully develop until you are 25. So I would actually say that it's about, like 11, 12 to 25 that's all happening during this period. So we obviously want to support these specific things. If we know that we've got 16-year-olds and the next portion of their life is college or not, it's either way though, it's becoming an independent person. Is that through college? Is that through getting a job? Is that through going to the military? There's all these different options. But we need to create programs that support the growth of all of these things. What programs are you offering that are helping kids work on their critical thinking skills? What programs are you offering that are developing leadership skills and getting teens to think about what their own leadership style is? So I want us to type into the chat box examples of programs that we either run or have heard of that work towards one of these things. So an example of what I'm talking about is like Money Matters. Money Matters is a BGCA program, teaches kids how to effectively, kind of deal with money, get a bank account, all of those kind of things. That's a huge independent living skill, right? Like they are going to need to have a bank account and know how to know how to handle their money before they can have an apartment on their own. So Money Matters is directly teaching, and it's got others in there, but it's a direct connection to independent living skills. What are some examples of programs that you've seen or run? Yes. Keystone Club to help with leadership skills. And then somebody also said, the difficulty living independently because no one ever taught them to. And it's so true. Like this whole thing of adulting, like this idea that we all talk about how adulting is hard. It's because we didn't grow up with people teaching us how to do it. They are skills you have to learn. So a couple on Keystone, really teaching teens leadership skills, community service, also sales. That is real world 21st century work skills right there. Like sales, I'm not a salesperson and I still use sales techniques in some of what I do. Why Youth of the Year? Absolutely. Junior staff program, right? There's so much junior staff. Let's think about leadership skills, critical thinking skills, 21st century work skills, problem solving skills. That hits almost everyone. Girl Strong empowers young women to effectively communicate. That's great too, because in our society, specifically women's communication is looked at as in the same way that men's communication is. And young girls, young women are not often empowered to speak up for themselves and often are told to do the opposite. So specific programs like that are perfect. Healthy habits, yes. Independent living skills. When I was young, I was like, when I get my first apartment, I'm going to eat brownie dough for dinner. And then I got into being adult and I was like, oh, I don't actually want to, but I don't know how to cook anything. So I had to learn. Torch Club, they're creating a public speaking class from it. That is so great. And that is such, I mean, you know, I sit and watch the YOY kids all the time, and their public speaking skills are key to their success. Passport to manhood, absolutely. It looks like somebody has a local bank that comes in each month with the teens about work, bills, and accounts. Yes, things that we all have to do regardless of if we want to. And then D2D, it's something to diplomas.
Diplomas to degrees.
To degrees. There we go. Thank you, LaFonda. Independent living skills, problem solving, absolutely. Smart moves for sure. Does a ton of this. And then job shadowing. Yeah, getting into some of that like real kind of next level workforce development stuff is a great way to engage teens. LaFonda, it comes from a very strong workforce background. All right, thanks for sharing about that and like kind of what are the programs that you are currently using. Just want to make sure nobody has their hand up or anything. Okay, I think we're good.
Clark, you are really going to have to help me with that. I don't even know that I can see their hands up. So
you see the participant button in your Zoom controls?
Yes.
Click that.
Okay.
And now it should, up at the top, you see panelists and attendees, and it shows us that we have 2 attendees with their hands up.
So far, not. Yes. Okay. I do.
Okay. And I just lowered their hands because I think they were just up from the last round because it was still Norma, Linda, and Tammy, and I don't want to put them on the spot again.
Well, you guys, you probably have figured out already that Clark is the tech person or the techie person, and I kind of need that one-on-one, but we tag team well together.
Yes, absolutely. It takes a village, right, to do anything really. Raise a child or run a virtual training.
Yeah.
All right, so the next thing that we're going to get into is the developmental characteristics of teens. Research tells us that the teenage brain is like super complex, and it actually develops at a rate faster than babies in their first 2 years, when the first time I read that sentence, I was like, oh my God, babies go through so much development physically and things like that because they don't remember it. So like all of that insanity that they go through in that first 2 years, we don't remember what it felt like to cut our teeth, right? We remember what it felt like to have growing pains when we were teenagers who were growing, right? Like, so I think about that difference of it's even more than what happens for a baby, and a baby doesn't have the memory of that for the rest of their lives. The parts of, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was going to jump in and just say, Clark, whenever I think about that or think about a teenager's brain, I have this picture of just all this craziness going on. And I think about a 0 to 2, a child from 0 to 2, they come into the world. They don't know how to eat. They don't know anything. They don't talk. They don't do anything. And by the time they're 2, they're running around telling people no. I mean, think about how much they have developed. So I'm sorry, that's just one of those moments for me that I have to just think about, like, that's really wild when you think about the fact that a teenager's brain is going that way. And I think that is also why we have to be patient with teens. I found, even in working with Boys and Girls Club, when you say you work with the teens, people kind of go, oh, and me personally, I've always loved to work with the teens. I think, you have to listen and you have to really realize where they are and do the activities like we did to really go back and remember how confusing it felt to be a teen. So just had to jump in there, Clark.
Oh, thank you. No, LaFonda, that's great. Please jump in anytime. Yeah, and somebody else mirrored what I said about she said that her parents also used to do the bills and how confusing that was.
Yeah.
Just this,
Yeah.
teenagers are in this constant state of like, we're not kids anymore, so I kind of need to know what it means to do the bills, but I really don't, you know. And that's just every day, every moment of the day, teens are experiencing something physically or emotionally that's like the first time they've experienced it, or the first time they've actually been able to contextualize it, right? So yeah, it's just, I think that should strike all of us, that teens are going through as much, if not more, development than, to your point, a fledgling that has nothing to a 2-year-old that runs away and says no. And some of, like, so we need to think about, like, what are these specific kind of we know the skills that they are working on right now, kind of just as a byproduct of the age that they're in. But we also want to think about, like, what is the actual physical, cognitive, mental, etc. development that is happening in young people. The parts of the brain that control judgment, planning, the ability to imagine consequences. I don't think that one grew for me until I was like 35. Those are all still developing. Self-regulation, social, emotional, and moral maturity, all of that. This is exactly, Andrea. They're learning to explore their self-concept. Very important. And to somebody else's point, they're learning to now, little by little, how to do these things that we are talking about. I'm almost 40, and I still have moments where I'm like, adulting is hard. And
Oops, Clark. She
I
actually told her age.
did actually tell my age. So yeah, like I'm still learning. We're all still learning. Madison shared that she thinks that if I guess your gender wrong based on your name, I am very sorry. I try to get it, but Madison could go either way, much like Clark. Or maybe Madison couldn't. I don't know if I've ever met a boy. Anyway, Madison shared that she thinks teens are dealing with so much: school, family, friends, relationships, extracurriculars, sports, church, etc., that they forget to take care of themselves. And that's why their self-esteem can be so low. It's so true.
Yeah.
It is exhausting, especially if you are an older sibling in a family. Our teens, they take on a lot of responsibility for their family. And yes, they're figuring out all those things. Your friends change. I don't have a ton of friends that I had from high school, right? Like I had a lot of change through that period. And so most of those relationships I eventually grew out of. And so all that's happening during this time, and it is a ton. So obviously all of this developmental activity has, right, Manuel, yes, all of that can lead to unhealthy coping skills. For me, I started smoking cigarettes when I was very young because that was my unhealthy coping skill to deal with all this confusion around me. And this is what we're talking about exactly. So thank you for that, like bringing it together. And so this, to the point that all of this obviously has implications for how adolescents make decisions and manage risk. So that point about there was a point that somebody said about, or that we talked about decision-making skills, like if these things aren't developed, teenagers are starting to learn that they have consequences. That idea, like I said, that one took me a long time. So exactly what you're talking about, Manuel, like we don't, as teenagers, as young teens, we really don't believe that we have consequences. For the most part, we believe we're kind of invincible, right? Like as a teen, that is true for most young people. And so if we don't steer that in the right way and teach effective coping skills and healthy coping skills, then the opposite is going to happen. And then also Paige shared that it's totally hormones changing from children into adults. They are not sure where they fit in. And absolutely. So if we look at the slide, there's really 5 main kind of domains of physical or of development that teens are going through. There's the physical, which is obviously the development of the body. We know puberty, all of that stuff is happening. Also, your physical abilities are really, you're honing those at those times, in that time. Cognitive, we're talking about the intellectual development, the development of the mind. Your capacity to critically think that's that cognitive ability. And then emotion, the development of one's feelings and abilities to read and respond to the feelings of the others, right? Like emotional intelligence. This is something that I wish that we had more of in our whole world. I think that this idea of having the ability to respond to other people's feelings, thinking about people other than yourself, that's really big on my mind right now. I think in the world that we're all in, there's kind of these vast differences of people who are not thinking about the greater good and people who are, and it's very confusing. I can't imagine being a teenager right now. I also can't imagine being a parent quarantined with a teenager. Let me just bless all of you if that's your reality.
Yes.
So, these are really important things that are happening. Also, social. Social is huge. The development of how you relate to others, that happens when you're a teen. So, we can't say that teens should not have social time. We, in fact, they need social time. It is part of how they are developing. We just have to structure it in the right way. So again, it's healthy. It's healthy social time, and we're teaching healthy social skills. And then the last one that I've got is moral. The moral, that's where you're developing your ethics, principles, belief systems, spirituality. What is your civic and community responsibility? So thinking about some of the things that we just talked about with Keystone and community service projects and things like that, like you're really helping youth find and develop their morals. What is their moral center? Because we all have to decide that for ourselves. There is no one right way. So these are massive things that are happening. And Julie, yes. So Julie shared that she thinks teens need more sleep and to eat healthier for a better mind and soul. Absolutely. It is so easy in the world that we live in to not sleep enough, to look at our screens until 2 o'clock in the morning. Also, it's super easy to run by McDonald's versus making myself a meal, right? So those things are... they're habits. Somebody else said it, healthy habits. We have those programs. These are habits because you can learn them. They become rote. Eating healthy is something that I had to learn, but now that I did learn it, I know how to do it. And I can make the decision to go to McDonald's when I want to, but I don't eat brownie dough for dinner because I learned that was not going to be healthy. So they have to learn it too. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with anyone, especially when we've got, I think about like McDonald's and things like that. Like, who doesn't want to go to McDonald's? It's really hard, right? To say like, oh, this thing that's everywhere that everyone does, that there's constant commercials telling me how great it is. And I have to make the decision that no, I'm not going to go to there. So that's huge. That is so much for a young person. I can't make the decision every time. Mine is the Krispy Kreme. When that hot donuts now sign is on at the Krispy Kreme drive-through, whew, I can't. I have to stop.
Clark almost gave in just yesterday. I've been staying in, and I had to go pick up some medication from Walgreens, and there it was, Krispy Kreme. Okay, and the hot light was on. And when I tell you guys, okay, I'll tell the truth. I did turn in, but I turned out. Okay, I decided not to do it. That's really difficult for me, and a lot of it comes from growing up. But I just wanted to also go back to some of these characteristics and maybe even take a second to think about these characteristics in COVID. Where we are right now, I've seen so many of the comments about coping and moral values and how we, the social piece. If you really think about, how important it is. I'm saying, I just saw a comment. Thank God I don't live near a KKK. Definitely. Because let me tell you, whoa,
It is
whoa,
like
whoa, whoa.
corner. So.
Every corner. I mean, Krispy Kreme is great. But, but again, we just have to think about these skills. And again, I think it's great when you go back and you think about when you were a teen and how were you built? How were you prepared for the next step in life? But even as we go through COVID, just think, if you really think about it, a lot of these things, a lot of these skills, they're being illustrated now, how we're actually coping with this pandemic. Remember that teens and young people are watching you and how you're coping and how you're dealing with it. So we also need to remember to model these things, because many times these skills may not be developing necessarily appropriately in the home if it is not the best setting. So again, I just wanted to jump in on the Krispy Kreme piece, because I almost gave in and was a victim just yesterday. And then again, I just wanted us to kind of come to our current state and place where we are right now in the world, and really think about how important these developmental characteristics are and how teens are being impacted and how they're able to cope with their fears and concerns. Many people think that right now teens aren't concerned. They typically do feel that they're invincible. But my experience actually in some of the different settings with teens, they are very concerned, and they are very concerned about our future. They are very concerned about what's happening with their parents and the jobs. They're very concerned about what is the world going to look like after this for them to live in. It's just really important for us to be reflective of all of this. So again, I tend to jump in and interrupt Clark, but I just think we have to take some time and really think about those things.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I really have been thinking about is that social aspect, because I know how important social development is for teens. How are they doing that right now? That is so difficult.
And Jade's comment, that's right. She says, I love making little small videos for kiddies to give them something fun to do and hopefully help them cope with going through this, because you have to think about their developmental stage and where they are with all of these. So that's definitely a great thing to do.
Absolutely. So I want us to think about the ways, so like thinking about these things, thinking about the fact that, physically they're evolving, emotionally, socially, morally, all of those things. How might some of these developmental characteristics impact the way teens engage at our club? So an example of that I could think about is, the development of one's feelings. So if there's a young person who has not spent a lot of time working on emotional intelligence and doesn't know how to respond to the feelings of others, they may have a really difficult time with peer-to-peer relationships at the club, because they haven't had the opportunity to develop those emotional skills. What are some other ways that some of these might impact how teens show up or engage at our club or youth center? And as always, feel free to chat that in or raise your hand, and I will let you off mute. And there will be a minute of silence on the line as we all think about ways that these developmental characteristics impact the way teens show up at our club or youth center. So again, we are thinking about how do some of these characteristics impact our kids' experience at the club. Another one I can think of, another example is like physical development. In particular, I think about kids who are either really big or really small for their age. that has a really intense impact on the way that other kids respond to them and adults, right? We know that when there's a young, in particular, actually for boys of color, white people view boys of color as much older than they actually are. So that when that happens, they make a perception that an older person is doing something and not giving the benefit of a doubt that this is a child. So those things have a huge impact on the way that our kids show up and how we show up for them. So Vanessa's talked about that they're just going to be awkward and make mistakes and they really need support. And you are totally correct. Like, teens are weird. That's why I love them. Teens were always my jam when I was frontline as well. Teens are super concerned with their image, and if threatened, they act out irrationally. Right. What is that in response to? So if their image is being threatened, what characteristic is being threatened? Difficult time adjusting to new environments, staff and procedures, absolutely. Impact them when they are taught how to handle the characteristics that are happening that is not within their control. This can help them develop healthy habits with emotions that can be overwhelming to them. 100%. Like learning how to emotional regulation is a huge one.
Yeah, what they think. We said what they think and what they wear. I mean, very key. Yes.
And Madison, when their identity is threatened, their emotional and social characteristics are threatened. So it's not that they're like, oh, I have to be cool. It's actually something that is being threatened in them that you need. Okay, what do we do about this? How did this impact your identity? And what do you want to do with that? Tamara,
maybe we need to let Tamara come on and talk about that.
So Tamara shared that developmental characteristics impacts them so much because they may be coming from certain situations from home, problems at school, or as you stated, development of the body. Emotional characteristic is a big thing for them and not knowing how they'll feel from day to day. Absolutely. Socially awkward. Sometimes the club is the safe zone to help them through these problems they are being impacted with. Absolutely. There are different power hierarchies at the club amongst kids. Cliques are different. We have a lot of clubs that have different schools that come into. So all of that happens at school can be alleviated in the club because it's not that same space all the time. Marina talked about
support. Yeah.
Support can make an impact on their identity and help them with their development. This is crucial in a family system. Absolutely. Most of how we develop is very dependent upon the role models that we have. And regardless, parents are our number one role models, and that can be positive or negative. Yeah. We have to think about that with everything that we do. So I shared that I started smoking cigarettes young as an unhealthy coping mechanism. And unfortunately, here I am now almost 40 and I still smoke cigarettes and I really, really wish I didn't. So I'm just going to be full and honest with you guys today. But I have a 9, 7, and 5-year-old nieces and nephew. My sister has 3 kids, and I don't ever want to smoke a cigarette in front of them because I don't want them to look at me as a role model in their life, somebody who's positive in their life, and then associate this negative behavior that I have with a positive adult, right? So mostly what that tells me, I always think about if there's something that I don't want to do in front of my nieces and nephew, it probably means, with some, caveats, it probably means I shouldn't be doing that thing, right? So Jade also shared that she finds kids who are new, they are distant at first and are guarded to go join and meet, but I remind them that it's a safe place. Absolutely. That identity and fitting in, belonging, that sense of belonging is critical right now in teens' lives. So thank you all for sharing on those. Okay, I don't know if 0.3258 is something. So Vicki also shared can't handle stress, difficulties adjusting to new environment. So one thing that I wanted to say to wrap this up is if anyone has seen the Quest model of program quality, it basically means that like if you have quality instruction and content, kids will come, they will show up, and because they keep showing up, they're developing skills and beliefs over time. And that equals to transfer outcomes. So this idea about learning how to handle stress, when I started in youth development, somebody handed me a grant, my grant deliverables, and it was like, you have to increase academic success. Mm-hmm. You have to increase attendance. And I was like, so these kids go to school 8 hours a day, and then in my 2 to 4 hours in the afternoon, I'm supposed to do more schoolwork with them? And I'm not a math teacher, so that does not make sense. Then I realized what it was is, I can teach emotional regulation. I can teach conflict resolution. So then if they have a math test that they're super anxious about, they know how to regulate their emotions so they can go in and take that test successfully. So that's when we talk about transfer outcomes or how clubs can impact academic success, that's really the way that we can do that, is through and some content development, yes, exploration of STEM and all of these things, but a lot of it is about that skills and belief development over time in order to transfer those outcomes to the other areas of their lives. Absolutely. Kids are sponges that look towards you as to what to do. So if you're open and welcoming, they're going to come around quicker than it's the opposite. Teenagers give what they are given. So always something to remember. All right. So we've thought about the developmental characteristics, like what are teens learning right now? So now I want to think about what are the elements that make a high quality teen program? So we know that teens are going through all of this. What can we do in our programs to support some of those developmental spaces that they're in? So when you walk into a teen program, you're going to see that it's a youth-driven space. Staff are providing like structure and support. They're coaching, but they're not 100% in charge. They're helping youth assume leadership roles and making decisions that are important to them. So what this looks like is that youth are actively engaged as not just as participants, but as leaders, right? As problem solvers, as agents of change. Youth projects and artwork should be the main display throughout your club or youth center. That is huge for belonging. If I have done something that I believe in, I mean, it's the same as when my 5-year-old brings me a coloring sheet that is not great, but it is sure hung on my refrigerator because I am going to say that I value that work that you put into that. So you're going to see that. You're going to see youth acting as leaders. They're going to take on significant responsibilities, helping lead and plan projects. If you know the youth program quality assessment, we get up into that youth leadership, that's the top, right? Like that's the highest level of youth engagement that we can offer, is by making youth our leaders. Youth voice is front and center. It's not a token, right? So like we often tokenize youth voice. We'll do a little survey or like, hey, do you like your program? And then we're like, okay, we got youth voice, but we don't ever do anything with it. So youth voice needs to be front and center, especially when working with teens, right? They are old enough that they know what they want to do and they can help you make it happen, to the point of, I'm sorry, my dogs are deciding to have a little playtime next time. Hear that? But to the point where, junior staff is a great one, and they don't have to be staff either. Get them in leadership roles, get them running programs, even if they're not, even if you're not able to do junior staff for everyone. They should really have hands-on learning opportunities. So this idea of like college tours, things that they can actually like real world experience that they can gain, that's the kind of thing that we want to create. And then also we want to make sure that teen talents are presented to the club, youth center, or the broader community. So we're displaying their artwork and their projects. Is somebody putting on a play? Are we opening up that play to the whole community? Are our kids doing a community service project in partnership with our local government? How are we presenting that to the broader community? To do a couple of things. One, we just want to do that. And also to LaFonda's point about when people hear we work with teens, they're often like, ooh, I want to change the perception that people have of teens, because teens are amazing. And so when they do that incredible work, I want to show that off, because I want adults to stop being like, ooh, I don't understand how to work with teens. Like, you were one, so I don't understand that. Just remember, what was it like to be a young person? Put yourself in those shoes, and that's the best way that we can help to create these elements of a high quality program. So our last kind of central idea is this role of youth development professionals. So we know what teens are going through. We know what a program looks like that is a high quality teen program. What can I as a staff person do to actually make that happen? You can cultivate teen voice and choice. How do you make that authentic inside your club? How do you create space for that and then make sure it's used? You have to connect programs and activities to teen interests. So if you've got kids who love video games, what does your video game programming look like? Are you building them? Are you running tournaments? What is it? You have to create high expectations, to the point that somebody said earlier about that teens are often, like, people have very low expectations of them. And I think actually specifically a family told a young person that they were never going to be good enough. And like I said at that, we live up to the expectations that are created for us. If I am a teen and everybody in my world is like, you're never going to amount to nothing, you're trouble, all of this, like, I'm probably not going to, like myself in particular, probably would have been like, okay, I'll show you how big of a nothing I can be. So we have to create those high expectations we want our kids to live up to. Again, those hands-on learning opportunities. How are we creating experiences that is not passive learning, that is really teens actively engaging and learning with materials, and then providing those opportunities for teens to present their talents. So there was a couple comments that I wanted to make sure to go over. I'm just trying to get who said. Okay, so Tamara offered that this has actually been true since changes have been made in our programs. It was a struggle before, but when we created and planned programs of high quality level, or really started having the materials available, they actually enjoy and participate more. Absolutely. So often when people think about like structured programs, they're like, but kids want to have fun. Structured programs should be fun. We shouldn't spend a ton of unstructured time with kids, right? Like they have that at home. So we want to provide structured time that is high quality, that is fun, that is meeting their needs. Jade shared that she has a game where she gets a group of kids and gives them some items to build. And I want to see which group can work better together. So it builds team building skills and to work better together. Yes, that's exactly the kind of thing. So you created a hands-on learning opportunity, which already is an element of a high quality program. And then you made it even better by making the reflection on the activity about team building. So they're learning about engineering and creativity and all of those things, and then also wrapping it all up around to think about how they showed up as a member of a team. And absolutely, kids learn when they're playing. Especially for young kids, playing is actually their job. That is what we want them to do. It's really all they should be, I mean, to a certain extent, they should be doing chores and all of those things, of course, and building responsibility, but play should be a huge part of their lives. Okay, so we are going to move into a little activity. We're going to see how this goes. Let's see. Okay. So I'm hoping that we can practice with a little bit of the information. So Ariana said that kids love to be challenged, even if it's the slightest. They want to know more and expand their knowledge. Absolutely. There is a great thing about learning zones. So If you're too comfortable, you're not really learning, you know, like it's easy, you're not really being challenged. That creates a lack of engagement. If it's too hard, that also creates a lack of engagement because it's not realistic, and that makes people frustrated that they can't get there. So there's this exact right learning zone that you were talking about, Ariana, that is the, where are they comfortable and safe to learn and to fail, but being challenged enough to keep them engaged, and the failure being something that they can iterate upon so that they don't fail the next time. So that's absolutely what, you know, really what we should be doing with all of our work with kids. So this next thing that we're going to do is one example of a kind of program that you could run with teens is a Jeopardy game. This may not be for every group of teens. I love trivia, and I've always loved trivia, so it would have been great for me, but not true for everyone. But this is just an example. So what we're going to do is we're going to think about some of the things that teens are really interested in. For example, social media or movies, TV, fashion. And I want you to think through some Jeopardy questions that would speak to one of these. So you'll need to have 4 options as an answer. So I'm going to give you an example. If I said TV is my theme, the question that I would ask, and you know, Jeopardy, it's a statement, and then you have to write the 4 options as questions. So the statement would be, this musical drama aired on Fox TV January 2015 and took the world by storm. My options are, what is Gotham? What is Empire? What is Minority Report? Or what is Glee? And already, Kayla jumped in. Madison says Empire. It's Empire.
Go for it, Madison.
Yeah. Okay. What is Glee? Paige even put it in the right format, but it's actually Empire. So, which I found that interesting as well, because I don't think of Empire as a musical. I think of Glee as a musical, but Empire is a drama about music. So that is how that question came to be. So what I want all of you to do is we're just going to take about 5 minutes. We're going to have some silence on the line as people start to put in either into the chat or in come off of mute, and give me an example of a question that you could use in a Jeopardy game for teens. Do, 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 do,
Got it.
do, 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 do. I may watch Jeopardy. What would you do as a YouTuber? So what would the options? Name this TikTok song. Man, I just downloaded TikTok. I'm not going to put videos on it because I understand that I'm old and I don't want to ruin it. But I spend hours on there just watching weird videos. And I love it. All right. So feel free to keep putting that. Yes, TikTok is a social media app that allows you to watch videos and dance. There's lots of dancing. There's also lots of like DIY craft videos that I'm a big fan of. Yeah, it's just there's a great one about this these kids put a potato in a box and got their dad to put his hand in the box and like try to guess what it was, and he was terrified, and it was just a potato. Okay, so if you have any questions that you wanted to put in, making a club TikTok is great. That's a great way for virtual programming. All right, thank you, Ariana. We've got, what is Lin-Manuel Miranda's hit musical that took and continues to take Broadway by storm? Is it A, Six, B, The Heathers, C, Hamilton, D, Fiddler on the Roof? Feel free to put the answer in the chat box. I know. Hamilton, ding, ding, ding. Laura for the win. Laura, Tori, Brittany, Samantha, we all know Hamilton. So yeah, these are all great. And then somebody said, can you name all 7 continents? Absolutely. Even like, what's the largest continent? What US city is the inspiration for the setting for Disney's The Princess and the Frog? I love that. Or this US city. So your answers would be like, what is Memphis? What is New Orleans? What is LA? What is Seattle? And correct, what is New Orleans is the right answer. So Norma Linda said, this social influencer became famous after leaving her job dressing Paris Hilton. So we could say, who is... Oh gosh, I know who it is. Yes, that's correct. It is Kim Kardashian West. I was just trying to think of other options. Like, I don't know. Who else? Nicole Richie? That's old. That makes me old. What is the height of the basketball hoop? What player is, or this player is on the cover of NBA 2011 and Madden 12? Don't know. This country is also a continent. Who holds the record for the most points in an NBA game? Absolutely. All of these are fantastic, and I don't know the answer to half of them. Who is the youngest Disney princess?
Oh, wow. We've all got a lot to learn.
We all have so much to learn. So these are all fantastic examples of a trivia game that you could put together with young people. And even just Snow White. I had no idea that Snow White was the youngest Disney princess. Is Spider-Man Marvel or DC? Snow White was 13? That super changes that whole story. Okay. All right. So you can see, just for us, just even thinking through that, we had some fun. I hope you all, I did. So I hope you all did as well. So that's just a really great way. You guys just all came up with some, I mean, right there's probably enough questions in this chat box to create an entire Jeopardy game for teens. So it's a really easy way to bring in different skill development for young people, mix it up. I loved in the questions, there was a mixture of like kind of more academic questions, like this country is also a continent, right? Like you're thinking about geography. Yeah. There was some that were in there about that. And then there was some that was just like, go into teen interest, like that's how you do it. You mix things up. So those are great. Yes, thank you for bringing in the Disney. Tyler Ninja Blevins was made famous as being the best player of this famous video game that has taken the world by storm. Does anyone know the answer? This is the last. Yes. Manuel, I think you're right. I don't know for sure, but I believe it's Fortnite. Current events. Yeah, absolutely, Norma Linda. There's so much going on right now that we could create a whole game just on current events. Fortnite's a huge one. Kids love Fortnite. So this is like, you could do so much with that. I don't know much about it, but I know it's similar. Like it's got some coding elements to it. There's so much that you can learn if you actually create a system around kids playing Fortnite at your club. Okay, I am gonna pass it over to LaFonda, who is gonna lead us through how do we take this back to our club? How do we How do we implement it? What's our action plan for some of the strategies and info that we just learned?
Well, I'll say this, the key piece of this whole training is to be able to take these learnings back to your club. So when I say the word blueprint, tell me what you guys think about. When I say blueprint, what comes to mind? A plan, perfect, a map, a guide, a foundation, an example. All of those are great because that's what we want to do right now. Many times, you know, you think about builders and so on and so forth, but you guys have got it, a vision. I love that. I absolutely love that. So what we're going to do, and as Clark has said, there are going to be some moments of silence because this does require some time to think. And initially, we talked about doing this in groups, but I think we're doing a great job of using the chat box. So I want you guys to dare to dream. And I want you to make a blueprint for an ideal teen center, okay? And that means no holds barred. You're thinking about unlimited resources. If you could create a teen center, what would it look like? What would the blueprint look like? You want to take into account the developmental needs because, you know, teens at some clubs may start at 12, some may start at 13. So again, you want to take those things into consideration. You also want to take their interest into consideration when you're thinking about this ideal teen center, because it couldn't be an ideal teen center if we didn't consider their passions, their interests, their talents. So virtually 5 minutes is a long, long time. But I think that we need to take that moment of silence because I think that we need to take something back with us. Something tangible, something, a plan, something you can see. And so I'm going to ask each of you to get out a piece of paper, a pen, and you know, we'll start with 3 or 4 minutes, and you know, I'll probably be talking anyway. But at the same time, I have to think about the fact that some people need quiet when they're doing things like this. But again, you're imagining the ideal blueprint for a teen center, a blueprint that gives you the ideal teen center. It includes all the developmental needs young people have. It includes their interests. It includes their passion. It includes adults that support them. You also want to think about your older teens. And yes, I do have a passion for older teens because I think they're closer to really our core, what we do. We're closer to seeing the results or the fruits of our labor. And so, you know, you might want to think about your 13 to 15-year-olds. You might want to in one category, and you may want to think about your 16 to 18-year-olds in another category. But again, take a few moments. Think about those 16 to 18-year-olds. So you want to think about workforce. Of course, I have to throw that in. You want to think about, you know, college and career tours and things like that. You just want to think about those next step, job shadow. So I'm going to be quiet probably for only about 30 seconds, but I'm going to do my very best to give you guys at least 3 minutes just to think and write down your ideals about some ideals and concepts about the ideal teen center. And this is, you have all the resources in the world. I know that's hard to imagine, but at this moment you have all of the resources in the world, and you have the opportunity to create that perfect environment behind those blue doors. When those teens arrive, they cannot wait to open those blue doors to the teen center or whatever area it is in the club that teens are together. So I promised I was going to be quiet for a minute, so I'm going to do that.
Except I'm going to talk. I'm just going to say one thing really quickly. Can you see, LaFonda, that I shared the document?
Oh, you did. I did.
Okay.
So can you share? Can you share it on the screen? Yeah. Can you guys see that? Let us know in the chat box.
Yes, we can see the PDF on the screen.
Okay, cool.
Perfect.
Thank you. So if you want to, you can either type into the chat, or if you see the annotate button in your Zoom controls, if you click that, a floating thing comes up and the third option is text. If you click text, you can actually type directly onto this document. So we can all see it, see the ideas. So either this or chat, whichever. I don't care, but just wanted to offer.
See what I mean, guys? That she's the techie one. And we actually are going to try to use that feature later. So I like that. And once you maybe come up with some really creative ideas and concepts, you know, we can begin to start sharing those in the chat box. I think of a teen program like a one-stop shop. What would it have? All right, we're starting to get some things. Things to help them to apply for college, computers, different games and activities that they like. You know, Jeopardy also has the ability to create some questions. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's called Career Jeopardy. I think that'd be a great game in this situation. Standalone teen centers at the back of main clubs with their own entry. That is ideal. Believe it or not, there are some organizations that have that. But just having their own separate space makes a big difference, you know, that ownership. As a matter of fact, I love that because I think that it's a great transition for the younger kids because they will be so excited to go through that door. Into that separate area. It says, let's see, Madison says, I would love an area dedicated to video development. It would have a green screen backdrop, computers with editing software, ring lights, video cameras, and tripods. Social media and film is huge right now, and it would involve so many skills that can lead to them to success. You're so right, because the jobs that most of our young people will have, they're not even created yet. So that's an excellent point. Gaming areas, music areas, food courts. Wow, that's good. A small kitchen, washers and dryers to help teach them some of those life skills. Maybe music rooms, performing arts facilities. Let's see, vocational areas, college prep areas, living skills. Teens need interacting space. They need a space in a safe zone. Yes, they do, a trust zone. Things to help them develop. Things to help them develop knowledge on STEM projects such as building, woodworking, engineering, car repair. You know, those are things that used to be in schools that are no longer in schools. I think it'd be great if they reinvented that, but guess what? They never will, because we will. Boys and Girls Club has the opportunity to do the lots of things that schools don't. I have so many teens that want to do web design. So having a dedicated computer or lab with high power computers would be amazing. You guys are coming up with some absolutely great ideals. And yes, Many times it does cost money, but a lot of times it doesn't. It's just about being creative. That's why I enjoy trainings like this, because you get a chance to share. It's the most powerful piece of these type of trainings. Let's see. My ideal teen center would have a game room with pool and ping pong tables, 3 study rooms, a movie theater, weight room, computer, library, cafe, a stage, a gym, a video game area, and a large multi-purpose room. That sounds perfect. Computers for college and job search. You know, we've got to make sure that young people have what they need, even right now with COVID. Access is very key for a lot of our young people to be able to do their schoolwork and all of the virtual pieces that we're all having to do. I would like a time for parental involvement, good incentives. Man, that's been one of my passions the whole time that I've worked with Boys and Girls Club, and that is to get parents more involved. When we get parents more involved, I think that's when we're really moving the needle. You know, so I really like that ideal, Vicki. Schools do not offer those skills anymore. You are so right, Edward. They need to learn how to cook, life skills, computer labs. Yeah, you know, while we're thinking about all these other things, they got to have the basic life skills to be successful. Let's see, Madison, whatever the school doesn't provide should be the things the clubs do. You hit it on the nose. And that's what I meant earlier when I talked about destination programs. That's exactly what I mean. We're doing things that they can't find someplace else. They have to come to us to get it. That's also a means of recruitment. So great ideal. Just those I'm just seeing it a lot, those basic life skills. Gosh, it just popped in my head. This is really crazy. I'm having one of those moments, but I just thought, like, you know, if we could like do a model apartment or something like that, you know, where they could somehow test out their living skills. I mean, somebody take that and do something with it. Quiet workspace, info jobs, information on jobs, computers to practice resumes, a place where they can brainstorm in groups, a little kitchen, added laundry, a garden, a sewing room. Wow. For people to come to, and that'd be a great place for parents. Yes. Teen rooms would have video games and board games set up. They should be able to compete against each other and learn how to improve off of each other. You know, even with competition, we have to teach young people how to self-regulate, you know, when there's competition, and how to have good competition, healthy competition. So you guys have thought about a ton of things that would make for a blueprint for an ideal teen center, and there's absolutely no way I can probably get through them all, but they're so good. Tammy said they are so focused on STAR testing. They are lacking teaching them life skills. Oh, I know, that's painful. Cursive writing. I mean, that's just a pain. I couldn't believe that. Like you said, how to sign their names. It is hard for me to imagine a world of adults that actually don't know how to sign their name. Now, you know, a lot of things are going digital, but I mean, you kind of get a self-satisfaction. My name starts with an L. And so I just kind of love kind of just farming that L. It's a self-identity thing. They only teach them the test, not to learn. And I think that's a good place for us to kind of transition into our next piece, where we want to take some of these things that we've talked about and discussed, these absolutely great ideals, and we kind of want to develop a strategy. We want to kind of figure out how we would implement these concepts and take them back to the club. I know that resources sometimes can be a challenge, but there's a lot of things that we've listed here that can be provided and maybe doesn't cost a lot. So our next activity that we want to go into is actually the implementation activity. Now, before we go into, thank you so much, Clark. Before we go into the actual implementation activity, if you guys would just kind of take a moment and look over this assessment, and if you would actually rate on a scale from 1 to 5, your compliance, your organization's compliance to the following statements. And I'll just give you guys a few moments to kind of read through this assessment, but it just kind of sets us up for the next activity. And you want to look at it maybe from the age group 11 to 14, and then the ages 15 to 18. But again, rank it with 1 being the poorest and 5 being the highest. Where are you in these particular areas? Thank you so much, Clark.
Yes.
Made this a lot simpler.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good.
Yes, I can hear you. Let's see, creating a social media for kids to use that as a platform to post their work, photography, their editing skills. I really, really, really like that, Sarah. That's great. And just like I said, as you're assessing your self in these areas, it probably won't take you a long time to do that. The next activity that we're going to move into, and really the last activity before our reflection, is actually the implementation. And we'll give maybe 1 more minute, Clark, and then we'll switch to the actual implementation sheet. And you guys will find all of this information and more in your packets. The packet is going to be a great opportunity for cascade learning. If there is someone that wasn't able to participate for some reason, or if you get new staff, you know, you will have this information to actually work with those individuals that weren't able to be here today. And in addition, you'll find a lot of other resources in your packet. And so, Clark, why don't we go ahead and move to our actual implementation action plan, okay? And this is actually, it's actually called Assessing and Honoring Teen Passions and Interests Planning Worksheet. And what I would like for you guys to take a minute and do, and again, these are some things that you can actually do if you're in groups now and safely social distancing, but maybe once you get back to your club. Think about some of the ideals and the concepts that you all listed in the chat box, because these are great. You know, and in fact, I hope there's a way I can capture and take these with me just as ideals. But if you would take maybe 1 concept, we can start with 1. If you're fast, you can do 2. But you actually want to take that ideal and concept. And here, if you remember the animation, the Japanese animation that I talked about earlier, this kind of just follows along. You will get the worksheet in your packet, in your participants guide. But for right now, go ahead.
I believe Valerie is sending that out, all the materials post the conference. So you'll get this whole packet that you can see here, it's 29 pages. There is a bunch of activities that we did from this. There's more activities in here that we did not do. And then all the kind of central ideas that I went through, like the role of the youth development professional, elements of a high quality teen program, et cetera. All of that information is in the front end of the participants guide as well. So great resource for after this for sure.
Yes. And so what you're doing right now is you're thinking of one of those ideals or those concepts, and you're actually putting it in the box there in the ideal number 1, okay? And then you move on to the second question. Ultimately, with this ideal or concept, our teen center programs will. And in my example, it's an opportunity for teens to join the club who are interested in it. And it also leads to, recruitment. So that's how it will help the club. So your ideal or your concept, how is that going to help your teen program? And I'll give you guys a few minutes with that. One of the questions I always get, or that it seems like is a challenge, and that's teen recruitment. And so as we go through this, these are, I'm telling you, these are absolutely great examples of how you could actually recruit teens. Someone said it earlier, really, we should be teaching them really what the schools are not teaching them. That's why I use the word destination. Our clubhouse should be the destination that young people are coming to do different activities that they're unable to do other places. That would increase recruitment. And then the next piece, and you can take your time, but I know that we have people, some people go fast, some people go slow. I'm a slow reader. In fact, I'm pretty slow, period. But the third thing is we need to be, it says who needs to be part of the conversation to help support and develop the ideal and concept. And we're doing this because many times we forget who else we need to involve in the plan in order for the plan to be successful. And so it's good right now to stop and take the time to think about who else do I need to involve in this in order to make this come alive? Do I need to involve the executive director, the teens in the club? So let's start there. In fact, let's just make that a staple. We always want to involve the teens in the club when we're looking at our programs. That should be on everybody's blueprint. But who else do you need to involve to make this happen?
I want to point out one thing about this too. It says that the local art school is a potential for who should be involved in this. And that's another thing that I want us to think about. I worked at a youth program for years that it was inside of a multi-service community center. I did not have a dedicated space. I had to break down and set up every single day. It was hard. And what I ended up mostly having to do was find partners. And we did a ton of field trips. So the local art school is great. And so one of the things that I loved that we had, it was in Seattle, we had a partnership with the University of Washington where they had STEM majors like from engineering, biology, et cetera, that mentored our kids. They came twice a week. They helped us develop programs specific to their content expertise. And then we used our youth development expertise to, take their content and turn that into a package that is really high quality that kids would want to be a part of. So we had the opportunity to use all the labs at the University of Washington. And then also they brought portable ultrasounds to our program one day, and the kids got to x-ray their arms and all of this stuff, which was very cool. So I know that resources can be limited, and this is where we have to find community partners that can help us build those resources somewhere else. I think about an art school, there's so much they could bring to you, or could you go to them? Is there a local library that has a computer lab that you could ask, can we have your computer lab 1 hour Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right? I'm reserve there. I'm I know there's a word I'm looking for. Can you reserve their computer lab? Or if it's not a library, what about your school? What are they doing with their computer lab after school? Or your college, your community college, do they have, so these are the ways that, because we're not probably going to get to create our ideal teen center. Unfortunately, I wish we all could. But right now, while we can't, who can we get to help us create throughout the community a teen center so that our whole community is a teen center?
Yeah, I think you'd be surprised at the number of organizations that are willing to partner and that are looking to partner. We don't know if we don't ask. So we don't need to repeat resources that already exist. for what it's worth. Yeah, we just need to tap into the ones that are there, because that also involves experiences outside of the club, which are real world experiences. And then the next thing is, what resources will you need to help support the ideal or the concept? You're going to need some resources. So just take a few minutes and stop and think about what resources would you need to actually be successful in creating this new club, or this new program, or just this new look. Because as Clark said, no, you're not going to be able to go back and rebuild. But, you know, it really would be great when the young people come back to the club, when the teens come back to the club, that there's a new look, that there are some new opportunities, that there are some new experiences that they could have. And then what are the first steps in putting this ideal concept in motion? You know, you need a timeline, and you need steps. You need to indicate what those steps are. You need to involve teens. Let's see, do you have ideas on how to partner in those ways? If our club doesn't have any of the transportations for youth, I would think the first thing is to see if they will come to you and get creative about that piece of it. All participant guides from our presenters will be shared with the attendees. I'm sorry, yeah.
Point too about the transportation, I will say, so when we partnered with the University of Washington, they actually provided our transportation.
Yeah.
They have vans, and so they would come and pick up the kids. So I know that even all of these things can be barriers. And ideally, of course, you have especially like a computer lab at your club. And I'm already in my head, like trying to think about like, what resources do I know that we have that can help with that? Yeah, that's a great question. So I will say in Seattle, we took the bus all the time, especially with teens. I would not want to get on the city bus with a group of 6-year-olds. But teens, like you can really set those expectations and say like, look, if you can't handle it, you just can't come next time, right? Like this is a choice that you make. And so that's a great question, Kayla. And Vanessa, I'm not sure if you do have public transit.
Great response. Yeah, I mean, that's actually a great response, because while you're using what I think about is that creates some learning opportunities. Naturally, when you're taking young people away from the club, it just automatically creates several learning opportunities. So I love that. It says you can limit your group sizes to transit and set expectations. Totally. Yes. Sometimes you do have to change your group size. And sometimes every youth is not ready for every experience. You do have to look at their developmental areas and their developmental needs and see where they are. We are in a rural area, but we do have a small college and a college and community colleges. I'm telling you, if you have the fortune to be next to a college, there are so many resources and partnerships that you can foster with community colleges, and especially community colleges, because community colleges are really engaged in helping young people to get to that next step. It's a lot different than a 4-year university. You go to a 4-year university, you are a number, and you need to come in ready. But your community college would be a great place. And then the community colleges want to do that because, again, that's a recruitment effort for them. Okay, so it really goes both ways. And then what is the 6-month goal for the ideal concept? We always have to look ahead. So we always have to look ahead and plan. So what is the 6-month goal for this ideal? Where would you expect to be in 6 months? Would you expect that, the program or whatever the ideal or concept is still growing? Or would you expect that, maybe it's happening? Be realistic. And then the last thing is, over the next year, this ideal or concept will help our teen program or our teen center become what? I mean, it could help it become so many different things. There's so much potential here. It could help it become that hotspot to a certain extent, where teens just want to be, because they know that they'll get an opportunity to try out some of the things that they're not able to do other places. So again, this worksheet is going to take a little time, and we understand that, but we wanted to provide you an opportunity to make the connection and to think about it. And I always think it's a great ideal to have a plan when you go back, to have something tangible when you go back. Do you guys think that that was a helpful activity? What do you think about it? Do you feel like it's helped kind of facilitate some thinking, some new ideals, some new concepts? Just give us a general idea, and then we're going to move right into the reflection. And basically, it's called 6 words. I'm glad you guys found this very helpful. Again, there's no cookie cutter approach to any of this. It's always about being creative, but I called my teens champions, is what I called them, because you can also use your teens in the schools. When you have young people that are champions, they're the ones that are kind of carrying the ideal about the club. And every club has one, that kid that's just really, really into the club. So don't forget about your young people as champions. But then we can go ahead and we can move into our last activity, and it's really our reflection. And basically, this particular exercise is we're going to actually use 6 words to just actually describe. Well, before we do that, one thing I was supposed to do is go over the learning objectives. And I don't know if we have those up. We want to make sure that, we went over the learning objectives. And basically, I can tell you, there we go. So when you look at these learning objectives, exploring opportunities for connecting real world relevance, gain and develop strategies to incorporate teen passion and interest, explore strategies to engage older youth, use information gleaned from best practices in the field. The hope is that these are the things that we talked about today, and that you gained some experience in, and that you feel you feel like you've gained something to take back and make your teen center more engaging, because basically youth-driven programs, that's what helps a program to be engaging. I feel like it helped us break down how to fully and properly plan out a new club, and that involves everyone that will enjoy it in the correct groups. Yes, thank you for that. That was the ideal. Clark, it looks like you're burning to say something. Is that? Oh, it looked. You had that look on your face like you were burning to say something. And I know we're winding down on time, and so what we're going to do real quick, I would like for everyone to actually put 6 words that would describe, what you've taken in today. Like, for instance, motivate teens to find their spark. Okay. What are you taking away from this? In 6 words, what have you gained today? What has your experience been? What are you excited about? Another one would be talents ignite when passions burn bright. I like that. Was that 6 words? Talent ignite when passions burn bright. It was. Okay. So now I want you guys to just start typing in the chat box 6 words that describe your experience today. Find community partners to help kids. I love it. Think outside the box for teens. Understanding that all teens are different. Yes. Motivate teens to explore life opportunities. Motivate teens to become better adults, inclusive of those going through development.
I love
Yes. You guys, I mean, these are the key things that you needed to take away from this session. Because again, today's session was critical connections. God, we got so much creative. I hope I didn't miss anybody. Creative, enhancing empowerment for the teens, motivate the teens and staff, motivation for the teens and staff. Utilize every gift every teen has. I love that. I love it. Giving the teens opportunities to succeed. Never giving up on teens who have a rough start. Valuable information, experience, ideals for teens. Inspire them to be themselves. Showing teens anything is possible. Always bring comfort to teens. Be there for our teens. Support for teens physically and mentally. That's very important. Teens need their own space. When I read those comments, I believe today was successful. Great minds think alike, motivate and encourage teens. Yes, that's what this was all about. Teens can be many times, people see them as difficult to connect with, but they aren't. All we have to do is really hone in on their talents, their interests and skills, and know that they can also teach us a lot about life. Have fun and interactive club experiences. Empower teens for a brighter future. With that last thing there, because I think that is what Boys and Girls Club does, is empowers teens for a brighter future. We are right at 1 minute to closing. So I want to give my fabulous co-star here an opportunity if she has anything to say. I have enjoyed this today and I've learned a tremendous amount from you all.
Same, LaFonda. I have had so much fun. I hope that you all had fun and got something out of it. I think that everybody did. So the last thing I wanted to point out is there are a bunch of helpful resources like the blueprint, etc. All of this information is in the participants guide. So you will get everything we talk about here, the Split Leadership University, which is distance training, all of those things, incident reporting, etc. All that in the participants guide if you need any of it. And with that, thank you all so much for giving us the opportunity to hang out with you for 2 hours. This is one of my favorites of this week so far, so I really appreciate it.
Definitely. I love this virtual all staff. This is actually great. Thanks for the claps. Thanks for the compliments. Enjoyed you all. Have a great rest of your afternoon. We never want to get in between you and lunch, and I think that's what's happening next for you guys.
I did want to say, so real quick, Ernestine has their hand up. I don't know if you want me to allow them to talk, and then Valerie, I'm making you the host again.